Great job. The whole government? Somebody else. Yeah. You never. Yeah, you came in.
Brian, this is for the public.
Correct. For the private one, those, nobody signed up for the tip.
Alrighty, I'd like to call to order the Lacey Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, May 16th. A call to order. I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the agenda and consent items.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, thoughts? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public comment. Is there anybody online?
I'm not seeing anybody in the attendee list, but just in case there is, this is the opportunity to address the planning commission. We have a couple public hearings tonight, so this would be things that aren't subject to the public hearing. If you have any public comments, use the raise hand function. Bring you in, going once, going twice. I don't see anybody here. I would assume everybody here is for the public hearing. All right, so I think we're good to move on.
Alrighty. Commission member reports. Kathy?
Nothing. Nothing for me.
Yeah, I was just following some of the different bills that went through the House as the session closed, and I know it failed a little bit ago, but the HB 1389, the rent cap at 7%, it's really just heartbreaking to see that actually didn't go through when we have people whose rents are doubling and we're looking at homeless people in tents on the street. So it's heartbreaking, but I was curious about the HB, I guess you would say that 1110, the modest middle housing, and how the different aspects of that are going to change what we're looking forward to. And I was wondering if, looking at the different language within that bill, is that something that's going to affect the decisions that are presented to us?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that bill requires that city do some things that we've already mostly done in Lacey, which is allowing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes on lots, on individual lots. And we allow up to a triplex now. You can go up to a fourplex if you are within a certain distance of a certain type of transit, usually high capacity transit, I think is the term. We don't actually have that in Thurston County. Interstate transit doesn't count as that. So really, we've already allowed the duplexes and triplexes. So we've checked that box. But there are some things in those regulations related to parking that would be different than what our current parking standards are and some other things. So we'll be looking at the legislation and having to adjust our code to accommodate for that. I think we just had kind of a briefing as staff the other day to talk about some of these things. And I think one of the major themes coming out of the legislature is in doing a lot of the implementation under GMA, they've given a lot of discretion to cities to do kind of planning bottom up. So figuring out how the city is going to kind of, meet the goals of GMA on a local basis. What we're seeing now is actually more kind of top down. So, the state is saying, hey, this is, especially when it comes to housing, we need to take these things serious. So we're going to actually start requiring the cities do some of these things. So we're in a little bit of a unique situation in that we're reacting to state mandates now where we typically haven't had to do that for a while. So we'll be looking at the legislation, figuring out what gaps we have in our current regulations, and we'll have to adjust to meet the requirements of the new bills that have passed.
Right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, no report from me. Gail?
Nothing. No.
Okay.
My report is this is my last meeting as I'm moving. I would have been aging out with Dave on January, but I'm moving. So it's been wonderful. And so this is, see you around.
And you brought so much.
We will
Planning
miss you.
commission.
Yeah, you'll be very missed.
Yes.
It's been a lot of fun.
Okay,
I have no report.
right. So we will move on to, do you have anything, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. First, I wanted to thank Peg for her time on the planning commission and I went back today and kind of looked at our minutes and that and kind of figured out, yeah, it looks like your first meeting was back on October 4th of 2016. So you've been on the planning commission a total of 6.5 years, which is a pretty incredible amount of
That's
time.
rare.
And you didn't run for city council.
Yeah.
I kept backfilling, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you filled an unexpired term, so you had that, and then you started basically your almost 2 full terms. You're just about 6 months short of your 2 full terms. So you came with a great background. I think you were very active in your HOA and wanted to get more active with the city, and so we really appreciate all your support over the years with your background there, as well as your background in the medical field and all that you brought from that as well. I was looking through some of the things you worked on over the years. It started with the implementation of our 2016 comprehensive plan. So some zoning changes that came out of our big last comp plan update. Stormwater was a very common theme. I think you've looked at stormwater from just about every potential angle, whether that was stormwater comprehensive plans or drainage manuals or design codes or whatever. Stormwater has been a big topic over these last 6.5 years. The Depot District and the pedestrian bicycle plan, those are some big plans that were worked on a few years back. The Planning Commission a few years ago did a major undertaking related to looking at some of our emergency housing regulations related to homelessness. Unfortunately, that didn't really bear too much fruit because it's still, there's been a recommendation made by the Planning Commission, but the council has never formally adopted it. And that's what spurred the community group that took about another year to look at the homelessness situation, and still had some additional recommendations coming out of that haven't been necessarily addressed by the council. That was a big lift by the Planning Commission. And then a major update to our shoreline master program, and then trees. Trees was another big PEG thing that a big update to our urban forest management plan, and PEG sat on she was the Planning Commission liaison to our task force group that we established to update our urban forest management plan. So Peg, thanks so much for all your hard work and dedication over the years. We'll remember you for all that you've done. We'll schedule you for a formal recognition in front of the council here in the next month or two, so that you can be recognized at that level as well. So thanks again, Peg.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did want to mention a couple other things. Rick, I think as everybody's aware, Rick Walk has been offered the position of city manager for Lacey, a former contributor to this group. Yeah, so he's been offered the position. The council has voted to authorize the mayor to enter into negotiations with a job employment contract. That has not yet been signed, but at this point, it looks like all signs point to Rick being city manager here in the near future, which will open up a position within our department. Grant and I both been filling in for the duties of community and economic development director, and we'll be looking forward to having a new director here and hopefully in the next little bit. And then one additional item I did want to bring up and actually do a little share screen here. We are submitting to the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee of Thurston Regional Planning Council an amendment to our urban growth area. So these don't happen very often. So we thought we'd kind of brief the Planning Commission on what this would look like. It's related to Cuyo Park and adding that to the urban growth area. Let me share screen.
Yeah.
So maybe I can just a little bit. So Cuyo Park, I don't know if anybody's aware, but Cuyo Park is partially located in the Lacey city limits and then partially located in unincorporated rural Thurston County. And so this green area here, this is Carpenter Road, Dram Road is, Britt Parkway is to the south and east. Let's see, Google Maps can kind of show it here too. It's a lot of trees and open space at this point, so hard to see, but Cuyo Park is kind of in this this dip in Carpenter Road as you head northbound on Britton Parkway. As I mentioned, portion of it's in the city limits, that's this green area here, but a portion is in unincorporated Thurston County, which is this portion to the north. And we cannot legally annex the park that's in unincorporated Thurston County in the rural area until it's added to the urban growth area first. And so we're actually applying to basically the final decision maker are the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. So we're going through the review process to have that added to our urban growth area in hopes that we can eventually annex that. There's some advantages for annexation. Obviously, having it all in the city makes a lot of sense for permitting, so that we are the permitting jurisdiction for, development of the park, which phase 1A is slated to take off here in the next 6 months or a year. And as well for emergency services. So if the park right now is kind of split. So depending on where you made the call from, you might get, a Thurston County Sheriff's deputy showing up or Lacey Police. So for kind of continuity and consistency of service, it makes a lot of sense to bring that area into the city limits. So we just kind of want to make the Planning Commission aware that we'll be moving forward with that application. The Urban Growth Management Subcommittee of TRPC, they make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that subcommittee is made up of various elected officials from around the area. So we actually will have city council members and county commissioners on that board that'll make this recommendation. There are some others, they're assembling this committee. This committee was established through our countywide planning policies. And to address urban growth area issues. There will be some others that you might hear about. I'm not as familiar with, but they're in other parts of the county that will be some adjustments to some urban growth areas as well. So this won't be the only one.
What's the white square in there?
So we do have essentially some, lack of a better term, donut holes that would be left by our amendment. And so these are essentially 7 different parcels that would be surrounded on all sides by either city limits or urban growth area. So chances are those would be added to the urban growth area at the same time. So if you've ever been out, this is Pleasant Glade Road. Pleasant Glade Road comes and kind of just dead ends there, and with no turnaround, just ends at some houses. That's those houses there. If you've never been out there, it's beautiful. Take some time, go off. You can go off Slater Kinney and hit Pleasant Glade Road, I think at 26th, and go out that direction. So that's where those are. Any questions on that?
What do you anticipate the county would do relative to this? Is there any loss to them to have designated parkland moved from county to urban growth?
No, it's not revenue generating property. It's owned by the city, so it's exempt from the payment of property taxes. So, for parks purposes, they would potentially, these folks may be added to the urban growth area and later annexed. So, there'd be a real small amount of assessed value associated with those. So it's more of kind of a logistical issue a little bit, and that, we probably would have annexed that area already had it been part of our urban growth area, but because it's not, we have to first get it added. And there's some criteria that allow for the expansion of the urban growth area. It's kind of, the way to look at it is the expansion of the urban growth area is kind of, especially for any development purposes, it's kind of like your last option to accommodate population. You basically have to say, if we're going to develop property and if it's going to be added to the urban growth area, we have already accommodated the population that we have in the city or in the urban growth area. This is kind of our, last option is to expand. Here, we're not expanding it for development of residential property. It's really just for a park. And so we don't have to make the, that criteria that this is kind of the last potential option doesn't apply here, because it's more kind of a jurisdictional boundary issue than it is anything related to any kind of development.
What caused it to be considered now versus at some previous point?
Timing wise, there were some other applications. This committee doesn't exist unless there's an application in front of them. So we heard that they were getting the gang back together. And so we said, well, this is our opportunity to get Cuyo Park all brought into the city. And so we took advantage of that committee being reformed and jumped on it.
And time frame for that process?
I don't know. We're have an initial briefing probably in the next couple of weeks in front of the committee. The committee will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners and they'll have to take formal action. And then that only adds it to the urban growth area. So that's probably going to be a several month process. And then at that point, that's when we can start annexation proceedings. So the annexation proceedings can be upwards of a 6-month process on top of that. So
Probably a year then.
it could be a year before it's formally added to the city limits. Yeah.
And when's phase 1?
It should be breaking ground, I believe, in the next 6 months to a year. And that's gonna be,
That's the little
Parking lot.
and
Yeah.
bathroom or something?
yeah, I think so, disc golf course, and some trails.
Is that in the current city park or is that in the?
Yeah,
actual-
that's, so parking lot, and that will be kind of located, there's an open, hayfield, probably back to this map here, so you can see a little bit. So it would be this portion here that's gonna be developed, for the parking lot, and disc golf.
Just before the barrel man.
The barrel guy, he's over here.
Yeah.
I love how flat
Blueberries.
it looks on Google Earth. Let me tell you, if you've ever been on a bike out there, it is not flat. It is not flat.
So this is the property here that would be where the parking lot is and the disc golf course and that, so you come off this hill.
That
coming
hill,
off,
yeah.
off
And there's
the-
one on the other side
and then
too.
there's
You know them well.
There was an old house here. This is property the city owns as well. There was an old house here that's now been torn down. So it's a significant holding. It's about 400 acres that the city owns there.
Is annexation simpler because there aren't homes there and such that, you'd have to work through that kind of stuff? Does that?
Potentially, it is a little easier because the city is such a large landholder there. Yeah, for sure.
There's not sewer on that road, is there?
No, not currently. No.
There will be though.
Oh.
We've been working on it.
Working on it.
That's what I have.
All right. Any questions anybody have for Ryan? On the spot? All righty, so now I'm gonna suspend the regular meeting and open the first public hearing, although maybe I'll do them separate.
Yeah.
Separate public meetings. The first is on the 6-year transportation improvement plan, AKA the TIP.
Oh, you stole my thunder, but I appreciate that. Hi, I'm Martin Hoppy. I'm the city traffic engineer. This is one thing I do every year for a long time. The TIP is a list of projects that we plan to start at least in the next 6 years. The main purpose of the TIP is to track state and federal grants, and it has to include regional projects. And what that means is TRPC has to be able to model it. It has been the criteria for quite some time now. All projects need to be on the comprehensive plan or consistent with the comprehensive plan. And we're gonna be updating that probably in the next year because we do have to add some new projects because of some of the annexations we've done recently. This year, we didn't add any new projects. We got a couple grants pending. So we just modified 2 of the projects that we got. I did find out last week that TRPC is looking at giving us another grant for the College Street project, so we'll have to amend that sometime. And last year, we got the Willamette Drive and Campus Glen roundabout grant for design only. So I added the rest of the project to the TIP on this one and added the right of way in the construction. And we're not removing any of them this year, and that's really all I have. Got any questions?
I have a question. It's more just trying to understand what we have here. And I think we might have reviewed this at a previous meeting, which I probably was not at. So I might be asking questions that everybody else already knows the answer to, but for the 2023 project cost, is that actual or is that,
It's an estimate.
that's an estimate of, but that's planned to be spent this year, is it?
No, these are just guesses, I guess, right now. And we're expecting them to cost that much. That's one thing that's really odd about the tip. They changed it from being a planning document, that the costs have to be exactly what the grant is. And at this point, we just don't know. So we put a number in and then we amend it later.
So these are all projects that we expect to do within the next 6 years.
Okay, so not, okay, so that, I see, that's
So
the,
the 2023 project cost is what it would cost today if we were to build.
if we were to do it today, but it's not going to be done in 2023.
Right, got it.
Absolutely.
That's why I was confused. I was like, wow. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So they're not necessarily in priority order, they're just.
They're definitely not. I've been trying so
Not
hard
in
not to do
priority.
that. So what the STIP ID number is the year we came up with the idea.
Right.
And then it's just a sequential number. Transportation funding is somewhat odd that we can't do anything unless we get a grant.
Yeah.
And we have no real funding.
I was a little bit curious because I saw there's a big roundabout that just went in on College at like, was it 22nd?
22nd.
22nd.
And so there's gonna be another roundabout. Is it gonna be that same size at 16?
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
No, we're at 60% design with that. If we get the federal raise grant that we just applied for,
Yeah.
we will have to start right away next year, about in the spring, and I schedule 2 years for that. And then when we go to construction, if we don't get the grant, we'll probably wait another year to start right away.
So you mentioned 16th and then there's another one on the south side,
Yeah, that's true.
37?
Well, okay, the project itself goes from where we started, that's the College Corridor Phase 3. That it starts at where we stopped at College and 22nd and goes to Lacey Boulevard. Then we have Phase 4, which starts at the 22nd roundabout and goes all the way to 37th
And there's gonna be a roundabout in there somewhere too.
and 29th.
29th, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we did a corridor study 15 years ago.
Yeah, probably.
That started about 2000.
were there, and I'm sorry, were there any other ones planned between 22nd and what is it? There's, the next slide is at the middle school, right?
37th, yeah.
So
Yeah.
29th.
And the
29th,
third-
that's what it is.
And with the Phase 4 one, we just hired the consultant. We're still negotiating, but they brought up some good points in the interview. And we're probably gonna be looking at replacing the signal at 37th with a roundabout.
With a roundabout.
So roundabouts still are considered to be the safest, most effective.
Absolutely.
And is there any new technology coming out, like, like our divergent diamond and such, which is totally a different kind of thing? Is there anything on the horizon that may?
I would guess there's some geometric things that we've learned over the years that are better, but nothing really new.
I love a good roundabout, so.
I've seen some silly roundabouts. I don't even know why they're the little small
I know.
ones, like you can't help
Oh,
but
the
drive over them
neighborhood ones,
sometimes, yeah.
Those aren't considered roundabouts. They're actually called traffic circles by definition. And all that's there for is to slow people down.
Which it does,
It does.
except for people that go straight through them.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have anybody on the line that,
I'll check. It doesn't look like it, no.
yeah,
Nobody online, so it'll just be anybody in the room.
they're all.
They're all here for the
next
Gwinnett,
one.
yeah.
Nobody here
think-
for the tip.
Well, a few comments.
Okay. So,
So you can close the public hearing and then open the regular meeting. And then the staff's recommendation is to vote to move to approve this, to recommend it to the council for approval.
so we will close the public hearing on the transportation improvement plan. And we will resume our regular meeting. And there is support and a request for us to move this forward to council. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Move it forward.
Sold.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All righty. Thank you, Martin, as usual.
See you next year.
Not big.
Not me.
Now I will suspend the regular meeting again, and we will move forward into the public hearing on the comprehensive plan amendment. Ryan, you're speaking on this?
Yep, so I'll give a little bit of a presentation, and then turn over to you guys to ask any questions, and then you can open the public hearing. Looks like you had some folks that registered. Just make mention too that you did receive some public comments via email, and I did not receive any additional above and beyond what I sent to you this afternoon. So you have the complete comments in your email. So just wanted to make you aware
It
of
was
that.
2, correct?
Yeah, I sent 2 emails. Yeah.
Plus what was in the original.
Plus what was in the original packet,
Yeah.
right? Yep, so there's the packet and then 2 additional emails. So you're here tonight to conduct a public hearing to make a formal recommendation to the city council on the Gwenwood Retreat Center Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Map Redesignation Request, which staff is recommending approval for. So a little bit about the application. We have a total of 4 parcels, a portion of 4 parcels equaling about 7.5 acres on about 28 acres of total property. You can see on the screen there. That's used as a private retreat center, including a lodge, cabins, and other outbuildings located at the south west corner of Hicks Lake and south and east of the intersection of Hicks Lake Road and 30th Avenue. So it's this orange area here, which is under consideration. The northern portion of the property and the part that is proposed for rezone is currently zoned high density residential here, and the proposal is to redesignate it to open space institutional. So the purpose of the request is to consider rezoning the property to open space institutional to provide more consistency between the current and future use on the property than what the high density residential zone can provide. The existing high density residential zone allows a density of about, or a minimum of 12 units to the acre or greater. So that means any future development of the property would essentially have to be multifamily development to meet that minimum density requirements of the zone. Property owners owned properties owned by a group of churches who wish to continue to utilize the property as a retreat center in the future, so they don't have any development plans. If the high density zoning district or the high density zoning district would allow the uses to continue. However, in any future development would have to meet that 12 unit per acre standard. Rezoning to the open space institutional would be more appropriate for the current future use of the property. So let's go to the next slide here. You can see the site is fairly well forested. Here is Hicks Lake to the east. 30th Avenue to the north, where Hicks Lake Road that ends into. Property contains a various number of outbuildings and cabins and a lodge building. You can see the lodge building here, playground and dock at the edge of the lake there. And it has a rather significant wetland that's on the south end of the property that connects between Hicks Lake all the way out to Ruddle Road. So you can kind of see this depression area here where there's no Doug firs. Doug firs don't like getting their feet wet. So you can kind of tell where the edge of the wetland is by where you can see the taller trees versus those that are the smaller ones. So so there's a large wetland area on the south end of the site. The surrounding properties have a mixture of zoning. I'm actually going to go back one slide again. So here you can see the zoning to the surrounding properties. So to the north, properties are zoned high density residential. These are what's known as the Hicks Lake multifamily properties. These have 2 project approvals for multifamily developments equaling 310 units. The zoning to the south is open space institutional, so this application would basically extend this open space institutional to the north. And the reason for this open space institutional is essentially a buffer zone protecting this wetland area that's to the south that I just discussed. To the west is essentially an apartment complex that is zoned low density residential. That is called the Forest Grove apartment complex. It's accessed off of Ruddle Road. So Ruddle Road is further to the west over here. And then to the east is Hicks Lake, and it does have a 200-foot shoreline management area. That's this pink area here that's called Urban Conservancy. So you see UrbCon on the kind of abbreviated there. That's what that means. So I did put in the staff report, some information on kind of various goals and policies from our comprehensive plans on that support the request. There's not a lot from our comprehensive plan that you can kind of glean in terms of this particular property, because it is rather unique. Because I think it's, you know, it's safe to say this is the only retreat center of its kind that's in Lacey, maybe even Thurston County, that has anything similar. So really it's about, when you look at this area of the lake, it's about protecting the environmentally sensitive area that's to the south of it. So really, you know, this application is very consistent with that part of our comprehensive plan. So I did include in the staff report some staff analysis, and we talked about that. You had an introductory briefing at your last meeting. We talked about kind of what the impact to this potential, you know, taking this high density and transitioning it to open space institutional will have some impact on the amount of potential units that this property could provide in terms of multifamily units. So we did some research, found that currently we have 2,493 multifamily units in the pipeline. So that means 2,493 units that are in some form of development application with the city. That's across the entire city limits. That's a substantial amount. It's probably, as far as I can ever remember, the highest that we've had. So for this property, 7.5 acres, it's safe to say that this property could develop out at about 20 units to the acre. That's a relatively average density for garden style multifamily apartments, meaning that it could develop at 150 units. So if we're thinking about it in terms of overall impact, if we're taking 150 units away from the development pipeline, it's really small. I did the math. I think it's about 6% of the total multifamily units just within the development pipeline, if you're to remove those 150 units out of the system. So in terms of, you know, what benefit or what impact would this have on the multifamily market, it would be relatively minor, 6% of the overall ones that we would have in the pipeline right now. So if we're thinking about in terms of what, you know, impact would this have on housing affordability or, you know, housing supply, those kinds of things, but essentially have no impact. So also wanted to make sure that we provide some information on the community benefit that this property provides as well. So it's a one of a kind, as I mentioned, in the community. It provides the opportunity for the rental of space for retreats, gatherings, trainings, those kinds of things. It's also a resource for the surrounding community. They do allow folks to, you know, walk the property, use some of the amenities. Some of the neighbors get to use the amenities and those kinds of things. And as I mentioned, they do not want to develop the property in the future. So their idea is to kind of just retain it, maintain it, and keep things going. And that open space institutional zone is really complementary to doing that. Again, it would also allow what could be an existing non-conforming use. So as I mentioned, the current high density zone is kind of incompatible with the current use of the property in terms of the retreat center. This open space institutional would actually make would actually conform with the use of the property, and under the allowance within the zone, it would actually be a permitted use. So it would, you know, if they wanted to, let's say, build another lodge building or build some more cabins on the property or do something like that, they would be allowed to do that under that open space institutional, versus if it was high density, they would not be able to. I did include in the staff report some information on utilities and streets. the streets in the area, as I mentioned, you come down Hicks Lake Road and turn on 30th Avenue. Hicks Lake Road will be upgraded with the development of these multifamily properties here, with the installation of things like frontage improvements and sidewalks, street trees, and those kinds of things. So it would, 30th Hicks Lake Road will be improved in the short term with these developments coming online here. The property is served by city utilities that is on city water. There is a 6-inch line that comes down 30th Avenue. So the water system comes down 30th into a 6-inch line, which could serve some future development of the property. And then a grinder sewer system is installed on the property that also comes down 30th. So a grinder system is a small diameter pipe that basically is connected to like, I guess it implies a grinder system that chops up the solids associated with the sewage and puts it in a small line. Then it is sent to essentially kind of the backside of this property where the apartments are, and then it gravities to a system that collects on Ruddle Road. So you have the authority tonight in your request tonight to hear the public, take public testimony, consider the testimony, and then make a recommendation to the council. Your options are, you could make a recommendation tonight. Staff would say, I think you have enough in the record and based on the testimony to be able to provide that recommendation to the council tonight. If you are prepared to do that and need additional information, certainly staff's available and can provide any additional information that you might need to help make that decision. In making your decision, we've proposed some staff findings and conclusions that would go along and support the request and be kind of the legal basis behind the decision that you're making or the recommendation that you're making. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions before you open the public hearing.
Any questions from any commissioners?
Good follow up to the
Yeah.
previous presentation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will open up for a couple people. I'm gonna have you come up here. The first person, is it Kate?
Yeah, hey.
I'm gonna have you sit up here because it's being recorded. And just introduce yourself.
Sure.
You can sit next to me.
Much better,
Yeah.
better ending to my evening. Thank you for that. Yes, I'm Kate Ayers. I'm the executive director of the Glenwood Retreat Center. And I spoke to some of you last month about this, and Ryan just said almost everything that I have here in my paper, so I'm not going to repeat that, except I would like to again extend an invitation to you all to come out and see our property. There's nothing better than I love to brag about Glenwood and invite people out and show them around. And if you do come out, you'll see that it is such a unique property. And Ryan, there is nothing like us. There are very few nationally that are left that made it through the pandemic that are similar to us with the lake and what we offer there. We do have internet, which is, we just got that, but we are very rustic, and that is not what we have around anymore. So it's very particular, and we are open to very small, private, personal retreats for people, all the way up to corporate trainings and community events. So we have a big range and we can accommodate a lot of people. Everything else that I was going to say has already been said tonight. So I thank you for your recommendation, and please, I'd ask you all to approve our application to rezone. So
Thank you, Kate. Next is Scott. And I can't, is it
Goddard.
what?
Goddard.
Goddard. You just go ahead and
Okay.
say your name again.
My name is Scott Goddard. I live 2720 Hazelwood Lane. That would be, we're neighbors of Kate's. We're 7 doors down, also on Hicks Lake, facing the lake, or bordering the lake. And I want to say that yesterday this is on the south end of Hicks Lake, which is where the wetland is. And I want to say that yesterday was a very exciting day on the south end of Hicks Lake because appropriately the day after Mother's Day, we had our first sighting of the goslings coming out of the wetlands. This is something we have every year, and there's always a first brood that comes out, but it's followed pretty quickly by a number of broods of geese and ducks that are bringing their young ones out. There's usually a couple of mothers, and they're surrounding a couple of the little baby goslings and ducks. And the reason they're hovering closely around them is because there's gonna be some eagles out flying around who are gonna be wanting to make a meal of the little goslings. And as the year goes on and a number of geese and ducks are out there, there will be some meals, and that's the way it functions there in an active wetland. And I'm bringing this up to emphasize that the value that the current operation of this property could not be a better neighbor to a wetland, in that they buffer the urban actions so that the land that is now designated as wetland gets the full emphasis of being a wetland, instead of, if an apartment building were backing up right to the edge. You'd still have a line that said it was wetland, but you would be losing some of the function of the wetland. I'd also like to say that I think Kate was very conservative in talking about the benefit of the retreat center to the community. I've attended a few services. I've never personally been part of a weekend 5-day retreat, but I do have some friends who annually do this. They're part of a church that rents space there. Like most of the events that happen there are church-related events, and it's a time for these people. It's a very special time. They come back every year to the same place in a natural setting, and no matter how you feel about religion, it's a time of self-reflection and introspection, that this is a unique environment for this. And it's going to happen here in a way that it would not happen other places. I think we can all agree that in this day and age that we're in, that some contemplation and some self-reflection are a good thing. This application by the Twinwood Retreat Center, there's a lot to like about this, okay? I've spoken about the wild, the birds and the waterfowl, the deer and all the other wildlife that are part of this. They like the idea of this rezoning. The people who use this retreat center, for whom this has become a special place that they journey to every year, they like this idea. The city staff likes this idea of this rezoning. I made a list here.
You're running out of time.
The owners.
You're running out of time.
Oh, I'm running out of time?
Yeah, we do limit.
Oh, okay.
So,
The owners of this property have indicated they like it, and we, the neighbors who live around here, like it. So there's a lot to like about this proposal, and we're asking that planning commission that you also like it. Thank you.
thank you, Scott. Okay, no one else was signed up, but I would like to thank Susan, Janet, Lynn, Vern, and Maggie for showing up also. Thank you. It's always good to see folks here supporting
Yeah, thank you.
or not supporting, just seeing folks is good.
Well, I think you have written comments from us.
Yeah. Alrighty. Any other questions from the?
So you can close the public hearing.
Okay, so close the public hearing now, and we're now back resuming our regular meeting. So questions on any of it?
I just want to throw out, and same thing I talked about last time, but I just want to point out that, we need to be very careful when we consider taking away high density residential zoning area. I'll preface that by saying I'm 100% in favor of this application. I think this is correcting what seems to be kind of an odd place for high density residential. And I know there's to the north of that, probably some similar feelings that it's too late for us to do anything about, but I feel like it's appropriate in this case when you look around to see it. But every time we do this, even if it's, 100 units this time or, some small number of units at a future time, we're at cross purposes to the other thing that we're trying to do, which is keep the urban growth in the urban growth area and keep the, the growth away from the rural areas. So I do feel like in this case, we have done that. And, but I do think whenever we see these, we have to be cautious of what we're being asked to do. We can't keep every grove of trees, if we want to grow the resident in the urban growth area. So I thank you, Ryan, for getting those numbers for us, just to kind of share with us what the impact of that is. And I know the owners have no intention of developing it anyway, so it's not like those units are actually going away. They were never going to exist anyway. So, and thank you, Kate, for your presentation both last time and this time.
I do think what Ryan pointed out, that in fact, if the group decides they want to do more construction there under the current zoning, they can't really improve their property and make it more amenable to the function that it does so well right now.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so I think for that reason, and for the reasons of the habitat and the fact that even people who live in the urban area need a place to go that's quiet and peaceful and do a little contemplation, as you said. So yeah, I'm 100% in favor of this too. I think it's great.
Any other comments? I entertain a motion to move this forward to council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we move to council. All right. Old business, any old business? I had one question about, it's a sewer question. I didn't get a chance to talk to Mr. Sewerman. But you know how they're redoing the sewer on Willamette?
Yeah.
Is that just an unplanned event, like they did, was it a too small of a sewer line?
It was a replacement of a lift station. So the lift station that is adjacent to the large stormwater pond there needed to be replaced.
And that was in the middle of the median or something?
And so that they were doing some changes to the pipe that feeds that.
So that didn't relate to the apartments coming in where they've connected a sewer
No.
line and the other side?
No, it was
I had a couple residents asked me about that.
yeah, no, it was so the lift stations were installed, Willamette Drive went in kind of mid-90s. And so some of those lift stations are starting to get a little bit old now. And
Yeah,
so,
we don't want old lift stations.
yeah, and I think they were, probably the lift station itself was a little under capacity. And so that they were upsizing it, replacing it and upsizing it to meet capacity and then having to adjust the pipes to meet that new lift station.
I will share that with my neighbors who asked me questions. All righty. Any other old business?
I have a question, you can tell me this is not appropriate. So Transit Month is in June and my company celebrates this. We have a lot of events. And we are encouraged to ride transit for the month. And I did trip planning on intercity transit to get from our office in Lacey down to the farmer's market in Olympia, and it would take an hour and 30 minutes with a half a mile walk on either side. And I had a break from the commission, but did routes change? I know that it's free now. Did they reduce routes or is it? 'Cause it was really stunning and really sad to me because I have a car because I can afford a car. I cannot imagine not being able to afford a car and needing to spend 3 hours to go 6 miles.
Yeah.
Using the Martin Way Express
No, that's,
No.
I don't think that Martin Way Express route is running right now. The one is what they call it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's back in service yet. Be- Because of staffing, because I don't know, I just ask Intercity Transit.
Wow.
That's an express route that goes from the Martin Way, so it wouldn't go all the way out to your office, it would go from the Martin Way Park and Ride here out to Capitol Mall, so it goes all the way down Martin Way
Yeah.
through downtown up to the mall. So, yeah, so what we saw, during the pre-pandemic, we were able to get finally a route that goes out to Hawks Prairie, so we won there, but then during the pandemic, they had a lot of issues with getting bus drivers, and then ridership dwindled. And so they're finally starting to come back to, they've just been hiring bus drivers like crazy in intercity transit. And then finally getting back to, some normalcy on their routes, but they still are not running full routes down Martin Way, which is the main corridor. And they have, we talked about this a little bit, maybe a year or two ago, is in their route planning and design, it's really kind of an older system that is this, it's called a hub and spoke model. So the hub is the transit center, and then it sends routes down the the spoke. So you can think of like the Olympia Transit Center downtown as a hub, and the spokes go out from that. The Lacey Transit Center is the hub, and the spokes go off from that, which probably served our community okay back 20 years ago, but really now we almost need to think about it in terms of like a spine. And so you would have these major spines that would go through the community. Martin Way would be one, going east-west, and then you would have north-south spines, and then you would have the connections coming off those. And so I think Intercity Transit is looking at long-range adjusting their model to a different model because of, it's becoming so inefficient to take transit wherever you go, because it's not direct, and it takes way too long.
They did just had a presentation that they did for where I work. They just are redoing their van pool system, and it's supposedly much improved and very reasonable. So, and they bought all new vans. So interesting.
Yeah,
I
but
find this would place people down in smaller clusters.
Yeah.
we did a bus ride. I did a bus ride with the mayor and some other staff from Olympia and from TRPC. We walked out to Martin Way here, and we took a bus down to Slater Canyon, had lunch and met everybody there. Coming back, we waited for a bus to come to take us back this way. Probably 15-20 minutes, a bus never came. So we walked from Slater Kinney back to City Hall, and that whole time that we walked back, a bus did not pass us.
Yeah.
So there is this inconsistencies in the route and the
Yeah.
lack of, certainty that you just can't go out and catch the bus. I mean, and it takes a long time, and you end up walking a long way. So, it's unfortunate. Stay tuned. I think, we'll continue to coordinate with Intercity Transit on their route planning, and I think we'll probably see some changes to that happen sooner rather than later.
Good question. All right, any communications or announcements?
Bye, Peg.
Oh.
Bye, Peg.
To turn in my lap.
Bye-bye.
That's official. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of learning, and gee, it's just so nice when people start going, bragging about government. Stop. Don't be saying that.
Just do something.
Yeah,
Like
just-
it.
You did find your replacement, didn't you?
Of course. They'll be contacting you next month. No,
Do they love trees as much as you do? So
I don't know.
You need
I'm
a
gonna
tree
stay, I'm
advocate.
gonna stay on the tree people in Thurston County, because I'm
Good for
leaving,
you.
staying in the county.
yeah,
Thank you.
we are.
I was gonna bake you a cake, but it didn't work out.
No coffee either.
Yeah, I don't know.
Coffee either.
All right, our next meeting is June 6th. We can actually, we have meeting.
Yep. We'll have a presentation. We've been working on an analysis of our mobile home parks.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah.
if you remember,
I'm
like,
excited about that.
yeah, so we've had an intern that's been working with us for the last few months that's gone out and actually done some inventorying and will provide the
Can
recommendations.
you give
coming
us a
out of that.
hint of how many mobile home parks there are in Lacey? Like 20?
I don't think there's that many. I don't remember
I
off the
keep
top of my
on
head.
seeing them that I
Yeah.
didn't notice before, now that I know we're gonna be doing this.
And then two, we onboarded our new housing coordinator. And so our intern is a member of the military. He's gonna be retiring. And so we were able to get him through a program where he did basically like civilian on the job stuff for us, but he got his full military, pay in this last 6 months. He is getting ready to retire. And so he's gonna be turning over this work to our housing coordinator to complete. And so you'll get to meet both our intern and our new housing coordinator that'll be moving these recommendations forward.
Great.
There was an invite that came out for city council on Thursday. Is that did we just get that randomly and maybe shouldn't have, or is there?
Yeah, it said that we're panelists.
Oh, well, you can disregard that. I don't know what that,
Okay, I was just like, what?
panelists for Zoom.
Have we been summoned or something?
No.
Well, maybe
Oh, you
Ryan
guys-
would tell us if we needed
You
to.
guys didn't hear.
Did you? Yeah.
I just assumed it was for this meeting. I log into this about once every 2 weeks.
Disregard that. That must have come an automated message when they were, I'll be there if anybody wants to join me.
So other than just attending, if we wanted to watch, there isn't anything for the planning commission.
Correct. We'll be talking about that's Thursday. I'll be there talking about the capital facilities plan update for the police station.
But what we just voted on, the retreat center will go.
This will come probably, we'll say late summer to the council. We're working on some other things. Another thing that'll be coming to fairly soon will be a major update to our Parks and Recreation plan. So I think our parks plan and maybe another thing or two will make up our
Yeah,
comprehensive
that's
plan
on the
update
agenda.
for the year.
I like that Parks and Recreation.
The TV show.
Yeah, it should be a TV show.
Should be a TV.
Okay, anything else for the good?
Here you go, Dave.
Again,
Did she get a keeper?
Ceremonious.
Did she get a keeper?
You could keep that.
No, they have to put another name on.
you beat it up over all these years.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't want you to kill another tree.
blood and
just-
everything
Just so
on it,
she could
yeah.
save that.
Again, thank you for your service for the city of Lacey, Planning Commissioner. And we are adjourned.
We're all like.
Ryan, you need this.
Yeah, I'll take that.